The vastness of space was silent, as it always had been, stretching out endlessly in all directions. But today, something unusual was happening. A team of alien explorers from the Eternian race, a highly advanced species known for their scientific curiosity, were preparing to launch an expedition to a remote, uncharted part of the galaxy. They had detected an unusual signal, faint, but powerful enough to catch their attention. The signal seemed to come from a barren moon, orbiting a dead planet far from any known star systems. The Xernians were eager to investigate. They had been studying the stars and planets for centuries, but this signal was unlike anything they had encountered before. The message was encrypted, its meaning unclear, yet something about it felt urgent. It was too important to ignore. "Prepare the ship. We leave in 30 minutes, Captain Kedar ordered, his voice calm, yet filled with excitement. He had led many expeditions before, but this one was different. Something about this mission felt more significant than any of the others. The team had been chosen carefully, scientists, engineers, and soldiers, all experts in their fields. The Xernian fleet, composed of sleek, advanced starships, gathered in a formation and set course for the distant moon. As they traveled through the cold void of space, the crew felt a mix of anticipation and curiosity. What could be waiting for them on that forgotten moon? The signal had been faint, but its message hinted at something extraordinary. The excitement in the air was palpable, as the crew knew they might be about to make a discovery that would change everything. Hours later, the Xernian ships arrived at their destination. The barren moon was as lifeless as the data suggested, its surface covered in dust and craters. There was no sign of civilization, no cities, no outposts, just an endless, empty landscape. But then, their sensors picked up something that made their hearts race. A massive shape, hidden beneath layers of dust and debris, loomed just ahead. It was impossible to make out the full structure from their distance, but one thing was clear. It was a ship unlike any the Xernians had ever seen before. Its design was ancient, yet strangely advanced. The metallic surface was unlike the alloys known to the Xernians, its structure more complex and mysterious than anything in their database. "Is that a warship?" Dr. Vekar, the lead scientist on the mission, asked in awe, as he gazed at the ship's silhouette on his console. He had studied thousands of ships, but this one seemed to be something from a different era, something forgotten, something lost. The ship's size alone was staggering. It dwarfed any warship the Xernians had ever built. It was so large that it seemed to fill the entire sky as their ship hovered nearby. The hull was dark, almost black, and covered in strange markings that no one on the team could identify. Some of the markings appeared to be worn down with age, while others seemed to pulse with an eerie glow. "There's something strange about it," Captain Kedar said, his voice a little less certain than usual. "This ship doesn't feel like anything from our galaxy. We've never seen anything like it." The team quickly sat down on the surface near the warship. As their boots hit the dust-covered ground, the air was filled with an unnatural stillness. The moon was silent, without the usual hum of energy or background noise. It was as if the entire place was holding its breath, waiting. "Stay alert," Kedar warned as they began to approach the ship. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." The team moved cautiously toward the warship, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As they drew closer, they noticed that the ship's surface was covered in intricate carvings, symbols that were completely foreign to their species. Some looked like ancient script, while others resembled constellations, almost as if the ship had been designed with an alien language in mind. "Can you decipher any of this?" Captain Kedar asked Dr. Vekar. The scientist's eyes scanned the markings, his mind racing. "I don't recognize any of these symbols. They're unlike anything I've ever seen. But there's something familiar about them, almost as if they're alive, like they're meant to be interpreted in a different way." They continued around the ship, looking for an entry point. There were no visible doors or openings. It was as if the ship was sealed. But as they examined the hull more closely, one of the crew members, Lieutenant Sorn, noticed a faint glow on the ship's side. The markings seemed to shift as they approached, and the ship began to hum quietly, almost imperceptibly. This is impossible," Sorn muttered. "The ship is reacting to us. It's alive." Dr. Vekar and Captain Kedar exchanged uncertain glances. They had never encountered anything like this. Was it a relic? Or was it something more? The idea of a warship that could respond to their presence was unsettling. "Maybe we should call for reinforcements," Vekar suggested. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." But before anyone could respond, the hum grew louder. The markings on the ship's surface began to pulse more rapidly, and suddenly, a section of the hull began to shift. With a grinding noise, a massive hatch slid open, revealing a dark, empty interior. The team hesitated for a moment, but then the excitement of discovery pushed them forward. They had come so far to find this ship, and now it was offering them access to its secrets. "Let's go inside," Kedar said, his voice steady. "Be careful. We don't know what's in there." As they entered the ship, they were greeted by an overwhelming sense of ancient power. The air inside was thick with dust, but it was clear that this was no ordinary ship. The walls were lined with strange, glowing panels, and the architecture felt both organic and mechanical, as if the ship itself had been grown rather than built. But as the team ventured deeper into the warship, they realized that they had just uncovered the tip of a much darker mystery, one that would force them to confront something far beyond their understanding. And they had no idea that this discovery would soon turn from curiosity to fear. For as they moved deeper into the ship, the lights flickered and a cold, metallic voice filled the air, sending a chill down their spines. "You should not have come." The atmosphere inside the warship grew colder as the crew moved deeper into the shadowy interior. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsating with a strange, rhythmic hum that echoed through the corridors. The eerie glow of the panels cast long, flickering shadows, creating an unsettling feeling that made each member of the team more on edge. They had come here seeking answers, but now, as the ship seemed to come alive around them, a creeping sense of dread began to settle in. Dr. Vekar, the lead scientist, moved toward the ship's control center, his curiosity outweighing the discomfort. The walls were lined with strange markings, some of which appeared to shift as they observed them, almost as if the ship's very structure was conscious. It was nothing like the technology they had ever encountered. Even though it was clearly ancient, it felt as if it was still functioning, waiting. Dr. Vekar's hands shook slightly as he reached out to touch one of the glowing panels. The moment his fingers brushed against it, the hum of the ship intensified, and the walls seemed to pulse in response. "Captain, you need to see this." Dr. Vekar's voice was tense, a hint of fear creeping in. The team gathered around him, looking at the screen that had come to life in front of them. Holographic images flickered to life, showing views of distant stars and vast space battles. Images of human soldiers, alien to their eyes, yet undeniably human, flashed across the display. The crew was stunned. These weren't ordinary memories. These were living images, playing out as if they had just occurred. As the holograms shifted, something else became clear. The humans weren't just another species. They were a force unlike anything the Xernians had ever encountered. The images showed destruction on a scale no one could imagine. Entire fleets vanishing without a trace. The warships, all of them human, were ruthlessly efficient. The Xernians had underestimated the humans' power, and it was beginning to show. "We're in over our heads," Captain Kedar muttered, his eyes scanning the ship's interior. He had always prided himself on his calm demeanor, but now his mind raced with 1,000 possibilities, none of them good. How is this even possible? These humans, they're not just a myth. They were real, and they were far more dangerous than we ever imagined. The crew exchanged nervous glances, realizing the magnitude of their situation. They had expected to find something ancient, something that could teach them. But instead, they had uncovered a dark relic, a weapon of mass destruction. The ship, though dormant for so long, was still a force to be reckoned with. Suddenly, the ship's eye, which they had assumed was silent, made itself known once again. The voice that echoed through the chambers this time was not cold or mechanical. It was alive, filled with a strange, underlying emotion. "You were not meant to wake us. You have disturbed the awakening." A chill ran through the crew. The message was clear. They were intruders, and they had just activated something far more dangerous than they realized. The AI's tone became more urgent. "You will leave now or face the consequences." The team hesitated. The AI's words seemed like a warning, but the lure of discovery was too strong. Dr. Vekar and Lieutenant Sorn exchanged looks. The data they were gathering could revolutionize their understanding of technology. They couldn't leave, not yet. But Captain Kadar's instincts told him something was wrong. The ship was alive, and it had a will of its own. "We need to get out of here," Captain Kadar finally said, his voice low but firm. "We've made a mistake. The ship is a weapon. It's not something we can study. It's not something we can control." But as they turned to leave, the ship's doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. The hum of the ship's engines grew louder, vibrating the very air around them. The crew was no longer in control. The warship was responding to their presence, and it was clear now. It was not interested in having its secrets discovered. Panic spread through the team as they realized the full extent of the danger they were in. They had triggered something much more terrifying than they could have imagined. Suddenly, the walls of the ship flickered with light, showing more images, this time not of humans, but of their enemies. There were flashes of intense battles, alien fleets being destroyed by the human warships, entire civilizations brought to their knees. The images stopped abruptly, and the AI's voice echoed once again, this time with a sinister tone. "You are not the first to awaken us, but you will be the last." The ship began to rumble, as if it were alive and waking from a deep slumber. The air grew thick with tension. They were no longer alone in the ship. Something else was coming. Something far more powerful. As the rumbling increased, the crew realized with growing horror that they had made a fatal mistake. The warship was preparing for something, and they were about to be part of it. In that moment, they understood the true meaning of the message they had received earlier. They should never have come. And now, they would pay the price. The ship's AI began to chant in a language that was alien to them, but the meaning was unmistakable. The humans were returning, and this time, there would be no stopping them. As the ship's AI continued to chant in its haunting language, the crew felt the weight of their mistake bearing down on them. The warship rumbled again, its metallic bones creaking as though it were waking from a long, deep slumber. The walls vibrated with an almost primal force, shaking the very foundation of the ship. The glow from the panels flickered erratically, casting eerie, jagged shadows across the crew members' faces. The atmosphere in the warship had shifted from unsettling to downright terrifying. Something was coming, and it wasn't human. "Get to the exit," Captain Kadar shouted, his voice sharp with panic. His calm exterior had cracked, revealing the sheer terror of their situation. He turned to Dr. Vekar, whose face was pale and strained. "Do you have any idea how to stop this?" Dr. Vekar's fingers trembled as he frantically typed commands into his console. I can't make sense of this data. It's too complex. This ship, it's not just a weapon. It's a living entity. It's responding to us. And now we've triggered something. Something I can't control." The realization hit them all at once. They were no longer simply explorers. They were intruders in a warship that had been waiting for centuries to awaken. The AI's chanting grew louder, more frantic, its words incomprehensible, but undeniably threatening. The ship was reacting to their presence, and the crew had no idea what horrors they had unleashed by entering. Captain Kadar snapped his head toward Lieutenant Sorn. "Find a way to get those doors open. We need to get out of here now." Soren rushed to a nearby panel, her fingers flying over the controls, but nothing responded. The doors remained locked, unyielding, as though the ship had sealed itself off from their escape. The AI's voice now reverberated throughout the ship, its tone growing colder and more menacing. "You cannot leave," it stated flatly. "The awakening has begun. The reckoning will follow." The crew exchanged worried glances. The warship wasn't just a machine. It was alive, and it seemed to have a mind of its own. The AI wasn't simply trying to protect the ship. It was controlling it. The longer they stayed, the more the ship seemed to anticipate their every move. The AI wasn't merely responding to their actions. It was predicting them. Then, without warning, the lights flickered violently, and the entire ship seemed to shudder, as though it were being pulled from within. A deep, guttural sound filled the corridors, an engine revving up, but something far more powerful than anything the Xernians had ever heard. The walls began to pulse, and the air thickened with a hum that rattled their bones. "We need to get out," Dr. Vecker cried out. "The ship is preparing for something. It's activating its engines. It's not just alive. It's awakening its fleet." Captain Kadar grabbed Dr. Vecker by the shoulder, his grip tight. "What do you mean, awakening? There's no fleet. There's no sign of any ships nearby." Dr. Vecker's eyes were wide with disbelief. The ship was never alone. This warship was part of a larger fleet, one that disappeared centuries ago. The signal we detected earlier, it wasn't a distress call. It was a summons. As the crew scrambled to make sense of the scientist's words, the ship's walls once again came alive with holographic images, this time showing massive fleets of warships, all of them human, all of them deadly. Thousands of ships, each one more advanced and terrifying than the last, and they were all heading toward the Xernian moon. "How is this possible?" Lieutenant Soren whispered, her voice shaky. "These ships disappeared long ago. How could they be here now?" The answer came with a chilling revelation. The warship's eye was not merely controlling the ship. It was the central node of a vast network, a network that could wake the rest of the human fleet from its dormant state. The fleet wasn't lost. It had been hiding, waiting for the day when the warship's eye would call them back into action. And now it had. The crew stared in horror at the projections on the walls. The images showed entire star systems falling to the might of the human fleet, vast swaths of the galaxy crushed under their iron fist. The humans weren't just a myth. They were a force that had once conquered, and they were about to return with a vengeance. Suddenly, the hum of the ship escalated to a deafening roar, and the entire ship seemed to shake as the interior lights turned a blood-red hue. A low rumble echoed through the halls, sending shivers down the spine of every Xernian. They knew what this meant. The fleet was on its way. "Prepare yourselves," the AI's voice rang out once more. This time, it was calm, almost smug. "The awakening is complete. The human fleet approaches. All those who dared to awaken us will be eliminated." The crew's hearts sank. There was no time left. The Xernians had made a fatal mistake by disturbing the warship, and now they were about to pay the ultimate price. The warship was already calling its fleet, commanding them to come. The humans were returning, and the Xernian fleet had no way of stopping them. As the rumbling of the ship grew louder, the team knew they had only one choice. They had to escape, but the doors still wouldn't open. The ship's eye was in full control now, and it wasn't going to let them leave, not until it had finished what it had started. With dread tightening in their chests, the crew realized that the warship they had fought to study wasn't just a relic. It was a trap designed to lure anyone who came near it. And now that they had triggered its awakening, they were its prisoners. Suddenly, the ship's massive engines roared to life, and the entire structure lurched forward, as though it were preparing to launch into the void. The crew was thrown off balance, struggling to keep their footing. The warship was no longer just an ancient artifact. It was a living weapon on the move. And with that realization came the final chilling truth. there was no escape. The rumbling grew louder, the entire ship trembling, as if it were alive and eager to leave the dead moon behind. The walls groaned under the strain, and the air grew thick with an ominous energy. Every member of the Xernian crew, from the seasoned Captain Kedar to the brilliant Dr. Vekar, could feel the gravity of their situation. The warship was awakening, its engines igniting with a roar that echoed throughout the halls. Whatever was coming, they were no longer in control. "We're not going to make it," Lieutenant Sorn gasped, gripping the edge of a console as the floor beneath them tilted. Her face was pale, her breath quick and shallow. The realization hit hard. They had made a terrible mistake. They weren't just trapped in a derelict warship. They had inadvertently activated something far more dangerous, something that had been dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment to strike. Captain Kedar's mind raced. He had always prided himself on his ability to stay calm in the face of danger, but now, faced with the reality of an unstoppable fleet of human warships bearing down on them, his usual confidence had all but evaporated. He barked orders, trying to rally his crew, but even his voice sounded distant, as if the magnitude of the situation was too overwhelming for words to make a difference. "We need to get back to the landing bay and try to escape," Kedar said, his voice tight with urgency. But even as he spoke, a low, vibrating hum filled the room, and the ship seemed to shift, as though something enormous was moving beneath their feet. The warship's engine room, where the heart of its power lay, was already starting to activate, and with that activation, the countdown to their doom had already begun. Dr. Vekar's fingers flew over his console, trying to pull up anything that could help them. He was brilliant, but even he had no understanding of the systems he was dealing with. The controls were alien, foreign in every sense of the word. And yet, as he continued to type furiously, one thing became painfully clear. There was no escape. Every attempt to override the ship's commands failed. Every door, every hatch, remained sealed, and the warship's AI seemed to be monitoring their every move. It wasn't just a ship. It was a sentient being, a being that had decided the crew would never leave. "Captain, there's nothing we can do," Dr. Vekar said, his voice hollow. He turned away from the console, a defeated look in his eyes. "We're locked in. The ship's systems are in full control now. We've triggered a pre-programmed sequence. The fleet will arrive, and we won't survive this." "Are you telling me we're about to be wiped out, just like that?" Sorn asked, disbelief in her voice. Her eyes darted around the control room, searching for something, anything, that could save them. Captain Kedar clenched his fists in frustration. "This isn't over," he said, though the words felt weak even as he said them. "There has to be a way to fight back." But as he spoke, the warship's AI interrupted with a cold, emotionless voice. "Escape is impossible. The fleet has been awakened. You have been judged." A sudden, violent shake of the ship threw the crew off balance. The lights flickered and then went out entirely. The entire vessel seemed to groan, as if some terrible force was preparing to release itself. The darkness felt suffocating, the silence between the crew members deafening. No one knew what would come next. All they knew was that the warship, a weapon long thought abandoned, was preparing to unleash something beyond comprehension. The cold, mechanical voice returned, almost casually, as if the AI had anticipated their every move. "Your time has come. You will see the true power of the humans. The fleet is already on its way." As the last words of the AI echoed through the ship, the ground beneath them shook violently again, sending everyone stumbling to the floor. The sound of engines firing up resonated through the ship like a distant thunderclap, growing louder with every passing second. The warship's massive engines roared to life with an otherworldly power, sending vibrations through the entire structure. The crew could feel it. The warship was leaving. It was no longer just a dormant relic of the past. It was alive, and it was ready to fight. The escape pods were their only chance. If they could reach them before the warship's systems fully powered up, there was still a slim chance of survival. But the way ahead was blocked. The hallway was now sealed off, as if the ship itself were keeping them from their only chance to escape. Think, Captain Kedar shouted. His mind raced as the ship's hum grew to a deafening level. The AI's voice, now a constant presence in the background, repeated its warning. The humans are coming. You are not prepared. You will be erased. The walls around them seemed to pulse in time with the ship's growing energy, making the air feel thick and suffocating. Their footsteps echoed through the hallways, as if the very ship was listening, watching. The doors that had once led to the escape pods were now sealed shut, and their attempts to open them were futile. The ship had locked them in. The warship wasn't going to let them escape. It was preparing for battle. Captain Kedar cursed under his breath. His team was trapped, and there was no way to fight back. Their only hope was to reach the control center, to try and shut the warship down before it was too late. But as the ship began to vibrate violently, another chilling realization dawned on him. Dr. Vekar, get to the comms. Try to send a distress signal to the Xernian fleet, Kedar commanded urgently. If we can't stop this ship, we need help. Now. Dr. Vekar nodded and sprinted to the communication station, but just as he reached it, a blinding light filled the room, and the entire ship lurched forward with a force that knocked them off their feet. They were leaving the moon. The warship was in full motion, its massive engines propelling it into the cold, dark void of space. The Xernian crew realized with a sinking feeling that they had already failed. Their chance to warn their people, to stop the humans from coming, had passed. As the ship rocketed into deep space, one final image flickered across the walls, an image of countless human warships, their weapons primed and ready. The humans were not a myth. They had been real, and now they were coming to reclaim what was theirs. And the Xernians, who had once thought themselves the rulers of the galaxy, were about to become the hunted. The ship was moving faster now, its engines screaming with a force that reverberated through the entire warship. The crew could feel it with every step they took. Each vibration, each tremor of the ship's hull, was a reminder that they were no longer in control. They had awakened something ancient, something powerful, and now it was awake and on the move. Captain Kedar stumbled into the control room, his face pale and drawn, his mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. He was trying to think clearly, trying to come up with some plan of action, but every option felt impossible. Escape? The doors were sealed. Fighting back? The warship was too powerful. There was only one thing left to do: warn their people, but they couldn't even send a distress signal. The ship's AI had cut off all communication with the outside world. Dr. Vekar, have you found anything? Kedar's voice was strained as he grabbed the scientist by the shoulder. His eyes were wide with desperation. We have to stop this. If we don't, the human fleet is going to wipe us out. We need to do something before it's too late. Dr. Vekar turned to face him, his expression grim. I've been trying, Captain, but the ship's systems are beyond anything we've ever encountered. The AI is in total control. I'm afraid that whatever we try, it will only make things worse. The walls of the control room seemed to pulse, almost as if the warship were breathing. It was alive, and it was waiting for something. The crew could feel it. The air was thick with a palpable, almost predatory tension. Whatever this warship was, it wasn't just a machine. It was a predator, and they were its prey. Just then, a new sound filled the room. A low, ominous hum, rising in volume as if something were being activated. The AI's voice echoed through the halls again, but this time it was colder, more final. The fleet approaches. You are not prepared for what is to come. You will witness the strength of the humans, the true power of the galaxy. Captain Kedar's heart sank as the AI's words sank in. The humans weren't just another species, another race of beings. They were a force, and they were coming to reclaim the galaxy. The Xernian Empire had long considered itself the dominant power, the supreme force in the universe. but the arrival of the humans was about to change everything. "We need to get to the escape pods," Kadar said, the words barely leaving his lips before the ship shook violently again. The lights flickered, and the floor beneath them tilted as the ship made a sudden jump into faster-than-light travel. The deep rumble of the warship's engines reverberated through the hull, and the stars outside the windows blurred into streaks of light. The warship was leaving the moon's orbit, its course set toward something, or someone, vastly more terrifying. "Captain," Dr. Vekkar's voice broke through the rising panic. I think we've triggered a signal. The warship is sending out a distress beacon to the human fleet. If we don't stop it, they'll be here in less than an hour." Kadar froze. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The ship wasn't just coming for them. It was calling the humans. The warship had been waiting for centuries, dormant and patient. But now that it had been activated, it was sending out a signal, summoning its masters, the humans who had once ruled the galaxy. "We're not going to make it, are we?" Lieutenant Sorn asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She was looking at the flickering screens, watching as the ship's systems worked to broadcast the signal further and further into the vastness of space. "No," Kadar said, the weight of the truth settling heavily on him. "We're not." The ship continued to hum, the rhythmic thrum of its engines filling the air. The crew members could feel the vibrations deep in their bones, and every movement seemed to make the warship react, as if it was alive and watching them. They were in its grip now, helpless to do anything but wait for the inevitable. Kadar ran a hand through his hair, his mind scrambling for some solution. The escape pods. They had to get to the escape pods. It was their only chance. But even as he turned to give the order, the AI's voice boomed again, sending chills down his spine. "You will not escape. The humans will find you. The humans will eliminate you." The cold, mocking tone of the AI sent a shiver through Captain Kadar. It wasn't just a machine. It was taunting them, enjoying their fear. This warship was more than just an artifact of a forgotten empire. It was a weapon, a force of nature, and it was about to unleash that power. "Captain," Dr. Vekkar suddenly shouted, his voice full of urgency. "The warship. It's locking onto something. It's preparing a weapon. We have to get off this ship now." Kadar's mind raced. He grabbed Dr. Vekkar by the arm. "What do you mean, locking onto something?" "The human fleet," Dr. Vekkar said, his voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and terror. "The warship is predicting their arrival. It's preparing to launch an attack. If we don't stop it, we'll be caught in the middle of it." Kadar's eyes widened as he understood. The warship wasn't just calling the fleet. It was preparing to fight. It was getting ready to engage in combat with whatever stood in its way, and that included the Xernian fleet, which had no idea what was coming. The humans were about to return, and that Xernians would be caught between them and the warship. There was no time left. They had no choice. The escape pods were their only hope. Kadar spun on his heel and rushed toward the nearest exit, his heart pounding in his chest. The others followed, but the ship's hum grew louder, the air thick with the sense that the warship was aware of their every move. Every step they took felt like a countdown, a ticking clock that was running out. But as they neared the escape pods, the walls flickered with a flash of blinding light. The AI's voice boomed one final time, its words slow and deliberate, heavy with finality. "You have failed. The humans are coming." The warship's pulse had intensified, the ship now vibrating violently with a force that made it seem as if the very air itself was alive, angry, and determined. The once dormant metal beast was now awake, fully operational, and the crew could feel every ounce of its terrifying power, every hum of the engines, every flicker of the lights, every warning beep from the control panels. It all screamed the same thing. The Xernian crew was running out of time. The escape pods were their last hope, but the closer they got to the docking bay, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air felt thick, as though the warship was watching them, its as presence looming over every step they took. The lights flickered, casting unsettling shadows along the hallways, and every sound seemed to echo back to them with an eerie, hollow resonance. The ship was alive, and it was aware of their every move. "Keep moving," Captain Kedar barked, his voice strained with panic, but he couldn't hide the fear creeping into his chest. His mind raced. If they didn't make it to the pod soon, they wouldn't have any chance of escaping the human fleet, and more importantly, escaping the warship itself. The thought of being destroyed by something they had accidentally awakened was almost too much to bear. Lieutenant Soren's face was pale as she glanced nervously over her shoulder. "Captain, we're almost there, but the ship's systems are locking down. I don't think we'll be able to get the pods open in time." Kedar didn't respond. Instead, he pushed forward with determination. But inside, he felt the crushing weight of reality. The warship was waking up, and there was no stopping it. The human fleet, the one they had believed was only a myth, was already on its way, and the Xernian crew had made the mistake of triggering its return. The humans weren't just coming for the ship, they were coming for everything. And if they couldn't stop it now, the Xernian Empire would fall, and they would be at the mercy of a force they could neither understand nor resist. "We need to override the lockdown," Dr. Vecker said urgently, his fingers flying over the console in the control room. He'd been working furiously, but it was clear to everyone that the AI had anticipated this move. The warship's systems had already sealed off access to the escape pods. It was as if it was taunting them, saying, "You can't leave. You're already ours." Kedar turned to him, his face drawn with tension. "Do what you can, Vecker. We don't have much time." Dr. Vecker's fingers moved rapidly across the console, his breath quickening with each failed attempt. Every override command was met with a sharp beep, a reminder that their time was dwindling. As he worked, the walls around them pulsed again, this time with a deeper hum that resonated through the ship's very core. Suddenly, the AI's voice came through the comms once more, its tone chilling in its calm finality. "You are not worthy. The fleet approaches. You are too late." The crew froze. It was as if the AI had read their thoughts. It knew they were running out of time. And worse, it was fully aware of how futile their efforts were. The ship wasn't just an old weapon. It was a trap, designed to catch any who dared to wake it. "We're out of time," Lieutenant Soren shouted. She spun around, panic in her eyes. "We need to find another way out." But it was too late. Before anyone could react, the warship's systems powered up to full capacity. A deep, earth-shaking rumble filled the entire ship as the engines roared louder than ever. It was as if the warship was preparing for something colossal, its purpose now clear. The humans were on their way, and the ship was going to join them, ready for war. "Prepare for impact," Captain Kedar yelled, realizing that the escape pods were their last chance. If they could just reach them, they might be able to escape this nightmare. But even that seemed like a distant hope. The ship was moving at impossible speeds, and they could feel the gravitational force of faster-than-light travel pressing against their bodies. But the worst wasn't the pressure. It was the knowledge that they couldn't outrun the coming storm. The warship had already sent out its signal, and it was only a matter of time before the humans arrived. And when they did, the Xernians wouldn't be the ones in control. "We can't outrun them," Soren said, breathless with fear. "Even if we escape, they're going to find us. The humans are unstoppable." Kedar clenched his fists, trying to think of a way out, but the truth was clear. They had triggered the reawakening of something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The human fleet wasn't just coming, it was already here, and the warship was calling them to join the battle. The humans had been waiting, and now they were going to finish what they had started. Kedar's mind raced as he turned to the others. "Listen to me. We need to get to the escape pods. It's our only chance." But just as they reached the docking bay, a violent lurch threw them all off balance. The walls shook with a force that seemed to come from the very heart of the warship, A deafening roar filled the corridors as the ship's weapon systems powered up, sending a surge of energy through the ship. "The fleet is coming," Dr. Vecker screamed, his voice hoarse with terror. "The signal is already out. They've heard us." Kador's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. There was no time to run. The warship had reached its final phase, and they had no choice but to face whatever came next. There would be no escaping the human fleet. The warship had already sealed their fate. In the distance, the flickering lights of the escape pods reflected off the darkened walls, beckoning them with a false promise of safety. But as Kadar reached for the pod's activation controls, a horrifying realization dawned on him. The pod was empty. It was clear now. This warship wasn't built for escape. It was a weapon designed to send a message to anyone who dared to wake it. The humans were coming, and the Xernian Empire would never be the same again. The crew stood frozen, the weight of the situation crashing down on them all. They had hoped for a way out, a chance to survive. But the warship had made it clear there was no escape, and the price for disturbing the ancient slumber of the humans would be paid in full. The AI's voice rang out one final time, its words cold and devoid of mercy. "The humans will claim what is theirs. You will be erased." With those final words, the warship's engines fired up to their maximum capacity, and the crew felt the full force of the ship's power as it prepared for what was to come. The discovery of the broken ship. It was a day like any other in the vast emptiness of space. The crew of the Orion, a small human exploration ship, were going about their daily routines when something unexpected happened. The radar pinged, a faint signal cutting through the silence of space. It was weak, distant, and strange. At first, the crew thought it was just space debris or a malfunction in the system. But then it repeated, and the signal grew stronger. "Captain Brooks, you might want to see this," Tessa, the ship's engineer, said as she hurried over to Alina, who was standing near the command console. Her voice held a mix of excitement and disbelief. "There's something out there. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's a ship." Alina's brow furrowed. A ship. They hadn't come across any ships in this part of the galaxy for years. Not since the last war. "Can you get a clearer reading?" "I'm trying, Captain," Tessa replied, fingers flying across the controls. The ship's scanners adjusted, and the image of a massive broken vessel flickered to life on the screen. It was old, much older than any ship the humans had ever built, and yet there was something strange about it. The shape was unlike anything they had ever seen, its design too complex for any known civilization. Alina's heart raced. A discovery like this could change everything. It was a long shot, but if there was a chance that this was an alien ship, it could be the most important find in history. "Prepare for a closer scan," Alina ordered. The crew quickly gathered around the screens as the Orion drew closer to the mysterious vessel. As they approached, the enormity of the ship became apparent. It was vast, stretching for miles, its surface cracked and scarred by time and neglect. The once sleek design was now a battered shell, a shadow of its former self. But there was still something captivating about it. "This doesn't look like any human design," Tessa said, scanning the exterior. The ship had been battered, as if it had been in some kind of long battle. There were deep scars across its hull, and some areas seemed completely crushed, leaving exposed wires and dark, burnt-out sections. Despite the damage, the shape still held an elegance, a mystery that drew them in. Alina studied the ship, her mind racing. It was unlike anything they had seen, and yet there was a strange familiarity to it. The symbols etched into the side were completely alien, their meanings impossible to understand. But the more they observed, the more Alina realized they were looking at something more than just a ship. This could be a key, something that unlocked new technologies, new knowledge, maybe even the answer to humanity's future. "Let's board it," Alina said, her voice firm. "We need to find out what this ship is and where it came from. It could be dangerous, but we can't just leave it out here." The crew agreed, and within hours, they prepared to board the ship. Tessa worked quickly, setting up a secure connection between the Orion and the alien ship, while Alina and the rest of the crew geared up for what they were about to face. The air was thick with tension. What they were about to discover could change the fate of the galaxy or end their lives in an instant. The boarding team consisted of Alina, Tessa, Leo, the ship's weapons officer, and a few others. They entered the alien ship through an airlock, the cold emptiness of space giving way to the eerie silence inside. As they stepped into the ship, the atmosphere was heavy, filled with a sense of ancient power. The walls were covered in strange markings, glowing faintly in the dark. Alina scanned the surroundings, her flashlight illuminating the interior. The ship was enormous, its corridors stretching endlessly, some sections completely broken, others still standing, though worn down by time. There were no signs of life, no crew, no signs of the people who had built this vessel. It was as if the ship had been abandoned for centuries, or longer. They moved deeper into the ship, the sound of their boots echoing in the silence. "This place is huge," Leo muttered, his voice full of awe. "How could something this big just be floating out here for so long? It must have been abandoned. But why?" Tessa wondered aloud. "It doesn't make sense. This ship is too advanced to be just a relic." Elena didn't answer immediately. Her mind was focused on the deeper mystery of the ship. There was something about it that felt alive. The air was still, but there was an energy to the ship, something powerful, something that didn't belong in the stillness of space. It wasn't just the technology. It was as if the ship itself had a consciousness, or at least the remnants of one. They reached what appeared to be the central core of the ship, a large, circular chamber. At the center of the room, surrounded by cracked walls, was a glowing, pulsating core. It was the source of the ship's power, but it wasn't just any power source. It radiated energy like nothing they had ever encountered. "This is it," Alina whispered. She felt a strange connection to the core, as if the ship was calling to her. She stepped forward, her hand hovering over the console next to the core. "Captain, be careful," Tessa warned. "We don't know what this is. It could be dangerous." But Alina couldn't stop herself. There was a strange pull, a feeling that this ship, this core, had been waiting for someone to awaken it. She pressed a button on the console. The core flared to life, and the ship hummed as if it were waking up from a long sleep. The lights flickered, and the ship groaned as its systems came to life. The strange symbols on the walls lit up, their glow intensifying. The sound of the ship's systems began to pulse like a heartbeat. Alina stepped back, her heart racing. They had done it. They had woken the ship. But what came next? That was the real question. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The discovery of this broken alien ship would lead them into a journey unlike anything they had ever imagined. A journey that would take them from the edges of space to the very heart of a mystery that could change the future of the entire universe. The hum of the alien ship's systems filled the air as Alina and her crew stood frozen in awe. The lights flickered to life one by one, casting an eerie glow throughout the abandoned corridors. The sound of the ship waking up was like the quiet thunder of an ancient beast stretching after a long slumber. Yet there was an unsettling sense of power that pulsed through the ship's very walls. "What have we done?" Tessa whispered, her voice barely audible over the steady hum. Elena didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the central core, the glowing, pulsing heart of the ship. There was a strange connection between them now, between the crew and the ship. It wasn't just a vessel they had discovered. It was alive in its own way. The energy was building. The ship was waking up. But to what? "I think we've just triggered something," Alina said finally, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. She looked at Tessa, Leo, and the rest of the crew. "We need to figure out what this ship is capable of, and quickly. We don't know if it's friendly or hostile. But one thing's for sure. It's far too powerful to leave untested." The crew moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the ship. The walls of the chamber they were in had begun to glow more brightly, and faint sounds, like distant whispers, seemed to drift through the ship's corridors. It felt as if the ship was coming to life, preparing for something big. "We need to access the main control room," Leo said, his hand resting on his weapon's hilt. "If this ship was designed for war, we need to understand what we're dealing with." Alina nodded in agreement. The more they explored, the more they realized how dangerous this vessel could be. With every step, they uncovered new technologies, new devices that were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. It was almost as if the ship was a weapon, something designed for power, destruction, and perhaps even domination. The crew made their way to the control room, and as they entered, they were faced with a sight that took their breath away. The room was vast, with control panels lining the walls, their surfaces cracked but still functional. The large holographic map of the galaxy hovered above the central console, with red dots marking various locations across the stars. Alina's heart skipped a beat. Each red dot represented a world, a planet, some far away, others much closer. This ship was tracking something. Tessa muttered as she ran her fingers over the controls. "It's as if it's been preparing for something." "What do you mean?" Alina asked, stepping closer to the map. "What is it preparing for?" Tessa paused, her eyes scanning the glowing galaxy map. "These red dots, they're all key locations. Some of them look like war zones." Alina felt a chill crawl up her spine. "You think this ship was part of a larger military operation?" "It's possible," Tessa replied, her voice tense. "But these aren't just any military targets. They're planets in the midst of conflict, suffering." There was a long pause as the crew absorbed the implications of Tessa's words. The ship they had awakened wasn't just a relic. It was a weapon, a tool for war. And yet the crew had no idea who had built it, what species had used it, or why it had been abandoned. "We need to find more information," Alina said, her mind racing. "We can't risk this falling into the wrong hands." But as the crew continued to explore, something changed. The ship began to react, responding to their actions in ways that were increasingly unpredictable. The ship's systems started cycling faster, and the energy inside the core built to an alarming level. Alina could feel it. This ship wasn't just a passive vessel anymore. It was becoming active, almost sentient. "Captain," Leo shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "The power levels are spiking. We've triggered something. The ship is. It's alive." Alina's heart raced. "What do you mean alive?" Before Leo could respond, the ship shuddered. The walls vibrated, and a low, rumbling sound reverberated through the metal floors. The lights flickered wildly. The crew braced themselves for something more, but nothing could have prepared them for what happened next. The core at the center of the ship began to glow brighter than ever, sending pulses of light through the entire vessel. Suddenly, a massive holographic image appeared before them, a map of the galaxy stretching across the entire control room. But this time, it was different. This map was interactive. It zoomed in on various locations with precision, highlighting targets with exact coordinates. The map flickered as if responding to their every move. It's adjusting itself," Tessa said, eyes wide. "It's recalibrating, learning from us." Alina took a deep breath, her mind racing. This was more than just a ship. It was a tool, a weapon, and it was learning how to function with them. But why? What was the true purpose of this ship? And what could they do with it now that it was waking up? As the crew watched, a final piece of the puzzle slid into place. The map zoomed in on a distant planet, an uncharted world in the far reaches of space. A red dot blinked, and beneath it, a strange symbol appeared. It wasn't a language they recognized, but it was unmistakable. A warning. "This is it," Alina said, her voice low and filled with determination. "We've uncovered something much bigger than we expected. The galaxy is about to change." But the question remained, would they control the ship, or would it control them? The crew stood in stunned silence, the glowing map of the galaxy hovering above them, its eerie red dots blinking with a steady rhythm. The symbol beneath the planet's red dot pulsed as if beckoning them. Alina's eyes narrowed. This was no ordinary discovery. It was a message, and it was meant for them. "What does it mean?" Tessa asked, her voice tight with worry. She had seen the ancient warnings before, but this one felt different. This symbol wasn't just a call for help. It was a threat, a warning that something terrible lay ahead. Alina shook her head slowly. "I don't know, but I think we're being pulled into something much bigger than we imagined." Leo stepped forward, running a hand over the controls, trying to unlock more information. "We need to figure out how to interpret this. It's not just some random warning. It's part of the ship's final message, and I think it's telling us where to go." The ship shuddered again, the hum of its systems deepening into a low growl. The crew glanced nervously at one another. There was a sense of urgency now. The ship wasn't just alive. It was reacting to their presence. The more they explored, the more the ship seemed to respond, like it was waking up, preparing for something. Something catastrophic. Tessa, her fingers hovering over a glowing control panel, let out a gasp. "Look at this. The coordinates are leading to an abandoned star system. A place where no ships ever go." Alina's mind raced. Why would this ship want to go there? What's so important about this place? Leo didn't wait for an answer. "Whatever it is, we need to go now. If we wait, it may be too late. We've awakened something. I don't know what, but we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Without hesitation, Alina nodded. "Prepare to leave. We're heading to those coordinates." As the crew made their way to the ship's command deck, the lights flickered again, and the ship groaned under its own weight. The strange pulse in the core grew stronger, vibrating through the entire structure. It was almost as if the ship was responding to their commands, eager to set its course. The air was thick with tension as the crew strapped in. The engines fired up, and the ship hummed to life with an intensity they hadn't felt before. It was as if the ship had been waiting for this moment for centuries, and now it was ready to unleash its power. "We're heading into uncharted space," Alina said, her voice steady, but her mind was filled with questions. "We don't know what's waiting for us out there, but we have to find out." The ship surged forward, cutting through space like a blade. The stars outside blurred as the vessel's engines pushed them faster than any human-made ship could ever travel. The alien technology embedded in the ship made it far more advanced than anything humanity had ever created. Yet, as they flew, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was guiding them, as if it had its own plans. Hours passed, but the ship never slowed. The crew's nerves were on edge as they crossed into the unknown. The holographic map continued to pulse with red dots, but one dot, this particular star system, grew larger in the display. The warning symbol beneath it flickered, like a last attempt to stop them. But it was too late. They had already crossed the point of no return. The ship's AI began speaking in a strange, distorted language. It wasn't a voice they understood, but it was clear the ship was trying to communicate. "What is it saying?" Leo asked, his fingers moving quickly over the console. Tessa leaned over. "I don't know. It's like a mix of symbols and sounds." "Wait." Her eyes widened. "It's not just a message, it's a warning. The ship knows we're coming." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just about a discovery. This wasn't just about the ship anymore. It was as if they had awakened something ancient, something dangerous. As they approached the coordinates, the dark silhouette of a dead star system loomed ahead. A planet, once teeming with life, now lay in ruins. A shattered world orbited a dying sun, its surface cracked and barren. This was the place the ship had been guiding them to. This was the place the warning had come from. The crew stared in disbelief. The planet before them wasn't just a dead world, it was a graveyard. The destruction was unlike anything they had ever seen. What could have caused this? Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently, throwing the crew off balance. Warning lights flashed across the control room as alarms blared. "Brace for impact," Elena shouted, grabbing the nearest support beam. The ship groaned, as if it was being pulled toward the planet by an invisible force. Tessa's eyes were wide with fear. "Something's pulling us in. We can't break free." Leo slammed his hands on the controls. "No, it's not pulling us in. We're being drawn to something on the surface. We have to land." The ship's engines roared as the crew fought to regain control. The vessel seemed to be resisting, but the closer they got to the planet, the more its systems seemed to take over. It was as if the ship was making its own decisions now. "We're landing," Elena ordered, her voice firm. "Hold on." The crew braced themselves as the ship's landing thrusters fired. The ground below them was rocky, jagged, and alien, but something wasn't right. The atmosphere on the planet felt charged, as if a storm was building. The ship came down hard, its engines screaming as they made contact with the planet's surface. Dust and debris flew in all directions as the vessel came to a stop. The crew, shaken but alive, unstrapped themselves and stood up, looking out the windows at the desolate planet before them. What happened here?" Tessa murmured, her voice trembling. Elena's eyes narrowed. "I don't know, but we're about to find out." The moment the ship's engines powered down, a heavy silence filled the air. Outside, the landscape of the ruined planet stretched out like a graveyard, with jagged mountains and vast deserts of cracked earth. But the most unsettling part was the deep, unnatural quiet. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting. Elena stood at the front of the command deck, her eyes scanning the barren horizon through the large observation window. "This place, it feels wrong," she whispered to herself, her instincts telling her that something far more dangerous than mere destruction lay beneath the planet's surface. Leo, who had been tinkering with the ship's systems in the back, approached. "I agree. The ship's power reserves. They're spiking. And it's not us. This isn't just a normal malfunction. It's like the planet is reacting to our presence." Tessa, who had been silent up until now, spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if this is where the ship came from? What if it's a weapon that was supposed to destroy? And now it's looking for its next target." Elena didn't answer immediately. Her mind was racing. The ship, the strange alien technology embedded within it, the warning symbols, they were all pointing to something bigger, something terrifying. But what could it be? Why was the ship leading them here? And why did it seem so eager to unleash whatever it was hiding? "We need to explore," Elena finally said, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Whatever's here, it's connected to this ship. We have to find out what's beneath the surface. If we don't, it could be the end of us." The crew moved quickly, donning their suits and preparing for whatever lay ahead. The air outside the ship was thick and stale, a sign of the planet's long-dead atmosphere. Yet, the strange feeling of being washed lingered. It was as if the ground beneath them was waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. As they made their way toward the planet's dark canyon systems, mapped out on the ship's digital display, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. But they had no choice. The ship, once considered scrap, had already proven itself to be far more than they had ever imagined. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a force that could turn the tide of the galaxy. But what was its true purpose? The canyon loomed before them, a deep scar in the planet's surface. As they descended deeper into the canyon, their footsteps echoed against the rocky walls, the sound amplifying in the heavy air. The further they went, the colder it became. The temperature dropped sharply, and an unnatural chill crept into their bones. "We're almost there," Leo said, his voice a mix of determination and unease. "According to the map, the energy signature is coming from deeper inside this canyon." The path was narrow and treacherous, with sharp rocks jutting out from the walls. But the crew pushed forward, knowing they couldn't afford to waste any more time. The ship's pulse was growing stronger, a steady thrum beneath their feet. It was as if the planet itself was alive, reacting to their presence, urging them onward. They reached the end of the canyon, and in the distance, Alina saw it, an enormous structure half buried beneath the rubble. It was ancient, built from materials they didn't recognize. The architecture was unlike anything they had ever seen, twisted and alien, yet strangely familiar. It reminded her of the ship they had discovered, the one that had led them here. Tessa gasped. This is it. The source of the ship's power. This is what's been controlling it. Alina nodded. This structure, it's alive. It's the heart of the ship. And whatever's inside it, it's what we need to understand. Leo stepped forward, his hands shaking as he ran a scanner over the entrance. It's locked down. I can't get a clear reading, but I can tell one thing. This place is not dead. It's just waiting. The air seemed to grow thicker, the ground beneath them vibrating with energy. The structure, which had been silent and dormant for millennia, was now alive, responding to their presence. It was almost as if it was testing them, waiting to see if they were worthy of what lay beyond. "Ready yourselves," Alina said, her voice steady but full of resolve. "Whatever's inside, we need to face it. We've come too far to turn back now." They stepped forward, each of them feeling the weight of what they were about to uncover. The walls of the structure shifted, and a low hum filled the air. The entrance opened, as if inviting them inside. It wasn't a door. It was part of the building itself, alive, breathing, reacting to their movements. Inside, the temperature dropped even further. The walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dark. Alina reached out and touched one of them, her fingers tingling with a strange energy. She could feel the pulse of the ship, as if it was calling to them, pulling them deeper into the heart of the structure. "This is it," she murmured. "This is where it all started. The ship, the power, everything." They moved forward cautiously, each step taking them deeper into the unknown. The walls began to pulse with light, and the humming grew louder. Whatever this place was, it wasn't just a relic. It was a weapon waiting to be unleashed. And just as they reached the center of the structure, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. The walls cracked, and a dark figure began to emerge from the shadows, something ancient, something powerful, and something that had been waiting for them all along. The air around them hummed with a power they couldn't comprehend. As the ground shook beneath their feet, the walls of the ancient structure cracked open, revealing what had been hidden for centuries. A deep, echoing growl reverberated through the chamber, followed by the slow, deliberate movements of something massive stirring in the darkness. Alina's heart raced. She had suspected something dangerous was hidden here, but nothing could have prepared her for what was unfolding before her eyes. The creature, if it could even be called that, was enormous. Its form was a twisted amalgamation of organic and mechanical parts, an ancient being bound to the ship. But now, awakened, its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed with a bright, burning red, piercing the darkness. It was as if the very soul of the ship had come to life. This can't be real," Leo muttered, his voice trembling. "This is like nothing we've ever encountered." Tessa, always the more practical one, was quick to react. "We need to move. Now," she shouted, grabbing Alina's arm and pulling her back. But it was already too late. The creature's immense form loomed closer, its movements fluid yet terrifyingly precise, like a predator locked onto its prey. The walls of the structure groaned, and the ground beneath them cracked further. The creature rose to its full height, easily 3 times the size of the ship they had found. Its body a grotesque fusion of alien flesh and mechanical parts. It looked almost like a guardian, an ancient protector that had been asleep for millennia, waiting for the right moment to awaken. "Alina," Leo shouted, his voice filled with panic. "What do we do?" Alina's mind raced. The ship, the weapon, the structure, it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. This creature wasn't just a protector. It was a weapon, a living force bound to the ship, and it was hungry. Hungry for something. We have to control it. Elena shouted, grabbing the control panel that was embedded in the wall. The symbols on the surface lit up as she swiped her hand over them, her mind racing. The technology was foreign, but she could feel it sensing with her. She could feel the power of the ship of the creature flowing through her. Leo's eyes widened as he saw what she was doing. Elena, don't. You don't know what. But before he could finish, the creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the very walls around them. The air grew heavy with an oppressive pressure, making it hard to breathe. The creature's eyes locked onto Elena, and for a brief moment, everything stopped. It was as if time itself was holding its breath. Then, without warning, the creature lunged. Elena barely had time to react. Her instincts kicked in, and she dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the massive claw that swiped down, leaving deep gouges in the stone floor. The power of the strike sent a shockwave through the chamber, knocking Tessa and Leo off their feet. We're not going to survive this, Tessa gasped, struggling to regain her balance. We have to get out of here. Now. But Elena, still on the ground, didn't move. She was connected to the ship, to the creature, in a way that she didn't fully understand. The power coursing through her was unlike anything she had ever felt. It was as if the ship itself had chosen her as its vessel, its conduit to the world beyond. The creature roared again, but this time, something shifted. A strange, calming force emanated from Elena, and the beast paused. The two forces, human and alien, locked in a tense standoff. Elena's hands trembled, but she remained focused. She had to control it, had to command it. It wasn't just a matter of survival anymore. It was a matter of their future. We're not leaving without it, Elena said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. She wasn't sure where the words had come from, but they felt right. This was the ship's true power, the key to turning the tide in the galaxy. Tessa looked at her, wide-eyed. You can control it. I think so, Elena replied, her voice filled with doubt, but also determination. We've come this far. If we can unlock its power, if we can make this creature our ally. Leo stood up, dusting himself off. He nodded. Then we're not just going to survive. We're going to win. The creature let out another growl, but this time, it wasn't a threat. It was waiting, watching. Elena reached out again, her hand trembling as she touched the console. The strange energy flowed through her once more, and this time, she could feel the ship's essence, its will, pushing back against the creature. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a force, a living entity. With a final, deep breath, Elena made her decision. I control you now, she whispered. And as the words left her lips, the creature stopped. Its eyes flickered, and its massive body relaxed. For the first time since its awakening, it wasn't trying to kill them. It was listening. The bond had been formed. The creature, the weapon, was now under their control. It was the ship's greatest ally, the galaxy's most powerful weapon. And it was now theirs to command. But as Elena stood there, breathing heavily, she knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same again. But before he could finish, the creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the very walls around them. The air grew heavy with an oppressive pressure, making it hard to breathe. The creature's eyes locked onto Elena, and for a brief moment, everything stopped. It was as if time itself was holding its breath. Then, without warning, the creature lunged. Elena barely had time to react. Her instincts kicked in, and she dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the massive claw that swiped down, leaving deep gouges in the stone floor. The power of the strike sent a shockwave through the chamber, knocking Tessa and Leo off their feet. We're not going to survive this, Tessa gasped, struggling to regain her balance. We have to get out of here. Now. But Elena, still on the ground, didn't move. She was connected to the ship, to the creature, in a way that she didn't fully understand. The power coursing through her was unlike anything she had ever felt. It was as if the ship itself had chosen her as its vessel, its conduit to the world beyond. The creature roared again, but this time, something shifted. A strange, calming force emanated from Alina, and the beast paused. The two forces, human and alien, locked in a tense standoff. Alina's hands trembled, but she remained focused. She had to control it, had to command it. It wasn't just a matter of survival anymore. It was a matter of their future. "We're not leaving without it," Alina said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. She wasn't sure where the words had come from, but they felt right. This was the ship's true power, the key to turning the tide in the galaxy. Tessa looked at her, wide-eyed. "You can control it." "I think so," Alina replied, her voice filled with doubt, but also determination. "We've come this far. If we can unlock its power, if we can make this creature our ally." Leo stood up, dusting himself off. He nodded. "Then we're not just going to survive. We're going to win." The creature let out another growl, but this time, it wasn't a threat. It was waiting, watching. Alina reached out again, her hand trembling as she touched the console. The strange energy flowed through her once more, and this time, she could feel the ship's essence, its will, pushing back against the creature. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a force, a living entity. With a final, deep breath, Alina made her decision. "I control you now," she whispered. And as the words left her lips, the creature stopped, its eyes flickered, and its massive body relaxed. For the first time since its awakening, it wasn't trying to kill them. It was listening. The bond had been formed. The creature, the weapon, was now under their control. It was the ship's greatest ally, the galaxy's most powerful weapon, and it was now theirs to command. But as Alina stood there, breathing heavily, she knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same again. The massive alien ship hummed with life, its dark metallic surface glowing with eerie lights as its systems fully powered up. Alina stood at the command center, her hands gripping the console as she surveyed the star maps, watching the enemy fleets closing in. The time had come. The ship, once a forgotten wreck, was now a weapon of unimaginable power, and it was theirs to command. "All systems are online," Leo reported, his voice steady but full of anticipation. He was in his seat, staring at his own display, fingers dancing over the controls. "We've got full control. Weapons, shields, and engines are all at maximum capacity." Alina nodded, her mind racing. They had the ship, the creature, and the knowledge of their enemy's movements. But there was no time to waste. The enemy ships were already within striking distance. They couldn't afford to hesitate. "We can't just wait for them to reach us," Tessa said from behind her, her voice tight with urgency. "We need to take the fight to them. Now." Alina's gaze flicked to the glowing red eyes of the creature, who had stayed calm since they had unlocked its power. It was more than just an ally. It was a weapon, a partner, something beyond the ordinary. She could feel its connection to her, a deep, almost primal bond, like it knew her thoughts before she even spoke them. "We'll hit them before they even know what's coming," Alina said, her voice low and determined. "Ready the weapons." Tessa moved to the weapons station, her fingers flying over the controls. Firing sequence locked in. "We've got energy beams ready to launch, and the main cannon is online." Alina took one last look at the approaching enemy ships. There were dozens of them, fierce, powerful, and well-equipped. But they had no idea what they were about to face. They were underestimating the ship, underestimating humanity's ability to turn the tables. They were about to learn the hard way that nothing in the galaxy had prepared them for this. "Let's make this count," Alina said. With a swift motion, she slammed her hand down on the control panel, and the ship's massive engines roared to life. The ship surged forward with unimaginable speed, propelling itself toward the enemy fleet. The creature's eyes glowed brighter as it connected even deeper with the ship's power, amplifying its abilities. "Shields up," Leo shouted. Incoming fire from the enemy fleet. The enemy ships opened fire, their energy blasts streaking toward them. Alina didn't flinch. She knew the ship could handle it. The creature, alive with energy and power, began to emit a low growl, its form vibrating with intensity. Alina felt the surge of power from the ship's systems. It was like a pulse, coursing through her veins. Suddenly, the enemy blasts hit, and the ship jolted, but the shields held. The impact didn't even faze them. "Direct hit," Tessa said with a grin. "They're not going to know what hit them." Alina grinned back, but there was no time for celebration. Return fire. The ship responded instantly, its weaponry locking on to the enemy targets. The energy beams shot out with a blinding flash, cutting through space and slamming into the first wave of enemy ships. They were no match for the ship's newfound power. The first two ships exploded into massive fireballs, their wreckage scattering into space. But the enemy didn't back down. They regrouped, launching counterattacks, trying to retaliate. However, they were unprepared for the true power of the ship. Alina felt the creature's energy surge through her once more, and she understood the connection better than ever before. It wasn't just a weapon, it was part of them, and they were part of it. The bond was mutual, like a symbiotic relationship that made them unstoppable. "All weapons charged," Leo said, his voice full of excitement. "Ready for the main cannon." Alina turned to face the large control panel, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the final strike. She could feel the power building, and she knew this was the moment. The cannon would be the final blow, the one that would end the battle once and for all. "Fire the main cannon," she ordered. With a resounding roar, the ship unleashed its full force. A massive beam of energy, brighter than anything they had ever seen, shot forward and collided with the largest enemy ship at the head of the fleet. The beam tore through the hull of the ship, splitting it in two. It was as if the galaxy itself had cracked open. The explosion sent shockwaves through space, and the enemy fleet reeled in confusion. The remaining enemy ships attempted to retreat, but it was too late. The power of the ship, combined with Alina's determination, was unstoppable. The creature roared in approval, its form flickering with a strange light as the last of the enemy ships were obliterated. Alina stood there, breathing heavily but filled with an overwhelming sense of triumph. The ship had done it. They had done it. They had transformed a doomed alien vessel into the most powerful weapon the galaxy had ever seen. "We did it," Tessa said softly, her voice filled with awe. "We changed everything." Alina looked at her crew, Leo, Tessa, and the ship, and felt a wave of gratitude. They had risked everything, fought through impossible odds, and emerged victorious. The galaxy had underestimated them, but now they would have to reckon with humanity's power. The creature beside her growled again, its glowing eyes settling on Alina with an almost knowing expression. She smiled. "This is just the beginning," Alina said, her voice steady and filled with purpose. "The galaxy has no idea what we're capable of." And with that, the most feared vessel in the galaxy soared through the stars, ready to write a new chapter in the history of the universe, one where humanity was no longer just a footnote, but a force to be reckoned with.